Welcome back to the Bluechip Breakdown, Vols fans. We're your hosts, Bull and P. We got a lot of news to talk about today. Obviously, spring practice. We had the big scrimmage, and we heard a whole lot of good things from Coach Heupel and from the insiders as well. So we'll be touching on that. Pro Day is going on as we're speaking, and I've got it up on the TV right now. So I may be looking over there, checking out what our Vols are doing. I'm going to tell you right now, Joe Milton already looks just a little bit nervous, but I'm hoping that our guys can come out and have a really good day. And also, we've got a few announcements coming up with Ethan Utley. Okay, he is the defensive lineman from Innsworth, and we are anticipating that maybe he will be coming to Tennessee, but it's down between us and Texas, and it sounds like Michigan kind of has an outside shot, but lately he has been trending towards our Volunteers. And then Jalen Matthews, who's the four-star offensive lineman from New Jersey, is set to announce here shortly as well. He's another one that I think Tennessee is in a really good position for. And we also got some news that the NCAA failed to appeal the court case ruling with the injunction. So sounds like everything is pretty much gonna stay where it's at with the NIL rules and with the transfer portal rules. So that's great news for our Volunteers. But we are gonna start off with some spring practice news. And number one is that Cam Seldon is out with a shoulder injury. Sounds like he had to have surgery on it. And P, you and I didn't think that it was that serious, but that's kind of what this program does. They tend to hide the, I guess, seriousness of these injuries from everybody. And it doesn't sound great to me. Okay, I don't know if he's going to be back for fall camp or what, but what do you think about this injury? Like, what is this going to mean for our Volunteers?
Man, it's like all of a sudden that running back room, you look at him, Peyton Lewis being out, that room's kind of razor thin all of a sudden. I mean, it's Dylan Sampson, it's Khalifa Keefe, and it's Sean Bishop. So, I mean, hopefully, it's not too serious. Like you said, this staff, this program, they really tend to like not be very forthcoming about injuries. They'll keep saying, hey, he's day to day, he's week to week. Next thing you know, we're week 2 or 3 of the season. He's still out. You know what I'm saying? So we're like, where's this guy at? So hopefully it's nothing too serious. But the fact that he had to have surgery, I mean, I just wonder what could have happened. Was he diving for a ball or something and separated his shoulder? I mean, what could have happened? Because we're even I don't know if he even got to practice in full pads before he got hurt.
Yeah, I know. You know what? That's an excellent point because I was just thinking about that and watching a couple of other teams' spring practices, and I'm like, man, it just looks like from the clips that we can see that Tennessee spring practice is a lot more intense than everybody else's. I mean, theirs is like NFL practice. You know what I'm saying? It's like they out there just walking around, kind of, brother-in-law and it, going through the reps, in like a quarter speed. It's unreal. So I do think that it's a good thing that Tennessee is practicing hard, and I feel like we're going to be ready by week 1, whereas other teams is probably going to take them up to week 2 or 3 before they can get into, like real SEC form. But at the same time, maybe we're practicing a little bit too hard. We need to dial it back some. What do you think about, do you think that this is an issue? Because we have seen some spring practice injuries over the past few seasons. Is this from our strength coach? Do we need to be lifting heavier or like what, or do you think it's just part of the game?
Yeah, typically, when I hear injuries, especially kind of you see a big number of them, influx of them, I look at the strength staff typically, but I think our strength staff is really good. We haven't had a ton of injuries kind of over the tenure, you know what I mean? Like the injuries we have are like in-game type injuries usually or things like that, but you don't really see guys getting hurt in practice too much. But I think it goes to how hard we practice. You look at pretty much all the recruits that came up to visit this past weekend, all these guys just raved about how intense practice was. First thing they say, hey, what are your thoughts of practice? Man, it was intense. You know what I mean? Like they're getting after it out there. Like they all said that. And I love it. I don't know if there's such a thing as going too hard. I'm sure there is. You don't want to go full speed, full contact on kickoff team, whatever. But you want to push these guys, especially when we're trying to chase something. We're trying to break through that kind of that threshold, make it to that next level, to that elite level. I think to get there, you got to push it, man. The strong will survive, and everyone else will be better off for it. So I love the intensity, and you just hopefully we can get these guys back and get these guys ready to go for week 1.
Yeah, hopefully so. But at the same time, what I'm looking at with Cam Seldon being out for all of spring, I mean, obviously, like you talked about, all those running backs inside that room that's left are going to have to step up. They're going to get a whole lot more reps. And this is something that we talked about a little bit earlier, I believe in this week or it was last week. And that, I mean, we need that depth. So it's kind of a blessing in disguise to have a guy like Cam Seldon missing some time or, like a Spraggins missing time, Peyton Lewis. All these guys that are missing time are having to go up against veterans a lot more. So I think that we are going to continue to get deeper because of this. But I mean, it most definitely sucks. And we'll see how those other guys can come along. Now, on to some of Coach Heupel's thoughts, right? He sounded like he's very impressed with our team, especially the new incomers to this team, whether it's from that transfer portal. We heard him talk about Miles Kitzelman. We heard Austin Price and Brent Hubbs talking about how maybe he can be that physical body, but that's no surprise to us on this channel. We saw that from his film. And then he talks about Ethan Davis, who's not necessarily new, but he just kind of threw him into that mix. Holden Stays. He mentioned Boo Carter and Mike Matthews as some guys who are out there making plays. But what were your thoughts just hearing what Coach Heupel had to say after our first scrimmage of 2024?
Man, it's not like he really likes what he's seen from the young guys. I think he really likes that secondary. You heard him mention John Slaughter, Boo Carter. He mentioned Idris Farouk, which I thought was a little bit surprising as a guy that's kind of consistently showing up. But overall, I agree. I think he was very pleased. His voice was hoarse, so I don't know if that was from today, him getting after, or if that's just been from, a few days of practice now. But it sounded like it was an intense practice, man. I think these guys are just being intense every single day, and it's going to translate, man. This is a day coming into it you expected to probably see the D-line dominate when you look at the guys we got coming back up front. And then some of the pieces we're missing on the offensive line, a lot of new pieces there. Guys aren't used to playing next to each other. You kind of expected the defense to dominate. I don't believe that Heupel really said who won the scrimmage necessarily, but I would assume the defense probably won just because they're a lot more veteran, especially up front, and a lot of new pieces on the offense side of the ball. But overall, man, I think his team looks good. He said Nico made good decisions out there, was in control, managed the clock well in the 4-minute drill, commanded the huddle, and did all those things well. So very, very pleased with what I heard. Love to hear him talk about Khalifa Keith. You hear what he said about him, how he was running physical and
running
the ball. Yeah, so that's huge news for us. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely beautiful because obviously, Keith is a guy that we're looking for to, make that push to continue to, work himself up into that 3-back rotation. Like we just touched on, he's got a great opportunity to do it. But I've heard coaches talking about him for the past couple of practices. So, I mean, he may end up getting that job, especially with the new running backs coach and Coach Sims. I mean, you never know who he's going to favor over the other. So, there's a whole lot of great competition battles going on. And it does sound like the defense was getting after it. Something that we also heard from Austin Price and Brent Hubbs is that, man, look, those young guys are getting to go up against the, Omar Norman Lots and all of that. So I know that they're probably getting the better of that offensive line and of the offense early on, but that's to be expected. Anytime that you're starting off in football, the defense is usually going to win the early matchups because offense takes time to gel. And with us having so many young players, out there, playing in this high tempo offense and things like that, it's going to take them some time to get acclimated to this system and to gel. But I would say by about week 3, okay, especially, once we get into the actual orange and white game, this team should look really, really good. And it should be really special. Now, somebody else that I want to talk about, we kind of touched on him briefly, is Boo Carter, right? Just hearing the fact that he looked really good out in space, I think that, for you and I, P, that is huge because we said, okay, can this guy continue to do what we saw in his high school film on the college level? Well, it sounds like he's doing that. So let's talk about our secondary. What do you see as far as what the starting 5 could potentially be, and then maybe even take it to what the backups would look like?
Well, starting 5, I mean, probably the 3 guys that I'm confident are going to be starting, your 2 corners, Jamar McCoy and Ricky Gibson, be your starting corners most likely. And I think Andre Turntime starts at safety. But after that, I think everything else is up for grabs. I'm sorry, not Andre Turntime. Well, I guess you could say Andre Turntime and Jacoby Thomas are probably, I'd say, locks to start. But then that star position, I think, is where you might see a Boo Carter break into it. Him and Jordan Thomas be competing there. But I like that whole group overall. There's a lot of depth in that room, at the corner spot, safety spot, star spot. And those guys are all multiple, man. I think Jalen Murray's another guy. He looks a little bit bigger than I thought he was. I mean, every time I see him, he looks like he's up there, over 200 pounds. He looks like he's a pretty solid guy. So just a lot of pieces there. We'll love to see John Slaughter crack that rotation. You heard Heupel mention his name as well as one of the guys that showed up today on defense. As a guy that I think he talked about his pass coverage skills, something like that. And, I love to hear that. I was like, man, they're finally starting to notice him, you know what I mean? So hopefully they let him get out there and play, because I think he is our best safety, maybe alongside Jacoby Thomas, in my opinion. But I think Turntime gets it just because of the experience factor.
Yeah, I can most definitely see that too. I would say probably same thing, especially talking about that safety group. That's where I feel like most of the I guess question marks will be at. And right now, it looks like Joe Milton is about to be running his 40-yard dash time. I can't wait to see what he's going to run. I'm going to try to time it inside of my head as he's going. But we kind of talked about this some yesterday too, P. Not to backtrack, but with him, with all these guys, I feel like they probably need to be testing outside of maybe Jalen Wright. But if he can get in here and run like a 4.6, 4.5 or something, I mean, man.
So he didn't run. So he didn't run the combine, did he?
No, he didn't do nothing, I think, except for the he did the vertical and he did the broad, but that was it. So
I think he can get a 4.5. And I think Jalen Wright, I think he's gonna run because he was disappointed. He ran a 4.3 and he was disappointed at the combine. He wants a 4.2.
I'm gonna tell you. So I just saw him running. He looked pretty slow right there. I'm gonna say that was probably somewhere around like a 4.7. He looked. He looked surprisingly slow.
Wow.
He actually looks like he's picked up some weight too. What the heck has he been doing? What the heck has he been doing?
Gosh dang, son.
Golly, yeah, that does not. But you know what? It's hard to tell because I'm timing it with my fingers. You know what I'm saying? So who knows? But yeah, that was somewhere around like a 4.7. So I mean, that's not horrible. But yeah, you like see him run up under 4.6. But anyway, back to what we was talking about. I'm gonna say this, okay? As far as these safeties go, there's a whole lot of depth there. I think even at the star position, we could move guys around. It looked like Jordan Matthews was playing with the safeties or with the stars. And who is this running right here? I don't know who that was. It just went. He looked pretty good going though. But anyway, dang, that's Jacob Warren going. All right, so you know what? Maybe we'll just switch gears for just a second since it's up and since it's going right now. We could talk about our pro day. All right. But yeah, so Jacob Warren just went. We didn't get to see him go all the way through it. But we've got a lot of guys that will be participating in the pro day. Well, we've got 15 players. Okay. So we already know about Joe Milton. We just talked about Jacob Warren. We just talked about Keaton, Jalen Wright. We've got Aaron Beasley. Smalls going. We've got Ollie Lane is going. Charles Campbell, I guess, is going to be doing something as well. Who are we missing from that list?
What about safeties? Tank.
Okay, Tank is going. Haddon. Judy's going, and we're missing another offensive lineman. I think it's Crawford.
Oh, is he going? Okay.
I think he's going too. Yep. So okay. I think that's everybody. We may have missed some. We may have missed someone, but anyway, so far, I didn't get to see much, but we just kind of went through what I was seeing. I'll tell you, Joe Milton looks like he's gained a little bit of bad weight. I don't know how that happens. He looked a little bit slow in his 40, but can he come out and throw well? I hope that he can. That's going to be the biggest thing for him. Intermediate throws, especially, and even the analysts were kind of talking about that as we're leading up to this pod today. But, outside of that, man, I think that we probably won't have too many people drafted, but Pete, like, what are your thoughts? How many people do you think that we can get drafted if they come out and perform well?
Man, that's a tough question. And another guy I missed was D. Williams. He's going today too.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. That might have been who was running.
Okay. So he's a guy, I mean, heck, he might get, I don't know how much value people put on these punt returners, kick returners these days, but he's a guy I can sneak into the 6th, 7th round just because, in my opinion, he's the best returner in college football last season, the past 2 seasons. He's a guy I can sneak in, but I think Joe Milton gets drafted. Obviously, Jalen Wright gets drafted. Who else? I think Jacob Warren has a chance. I think a team might fall in love with him late just because he's so big. And if he can test well, he may have a chance. Castles.
I was just about to say, Callie is another one. Yeah, so
he
should be running today. Yeah.
Yeah. Because what is he? He's about 6'5", 6'4", like 250, 255. I mean, he's got good size.
Yeah, he's got prototype NFL tight end size. I think that out of all the players that may end up getting drafted, it would be Joe Milton if he does very well today. Jalen Wright, I think, is pretty much a lock. And then I would say Callie Castles. Oh, and then also Haddon. But those 4, I would say, are the most draftable players that we have. They are going to have to test well, especially, Haddon, because he didn't test at the combine either. So his 40 time needs to be probably, low 4.4, sub 4.4 for him to get into that mix. But I do want to. I'm not going to talk too much more about the pro day, even though it is going. And Callie Castles is running right now. He looks good. He looks good.
Are they showing the times or no?
No. They're not showing time, so you kind of got to gauge it on your own. But
you have to rewind and get the stopwatch.
I know it. Yeah, but he most definitely does look good. But anyway, we're gonna go ahead and get back into spring practice here, y'all. I didn't hear anything about the linebackers. Did you hear them talk about linebackers at all?
Nah, not at all.
Yeah, so that's an interesting thing right there. Who's going to step up at that position? Because you've got Herring out, okay, you've got Arion Carter out. Can we keep Keenan Pili healthy? And then also, can Jeremiah Telander kind of build off of where he left from last season? What's going to happen with a guy like Caleb Perry? Is he going to show up for us this season? Because he didn't look great last year on film by any means at all. And then obviously we've got Edwin Spillman. But out of that group so far, just on what you've seen in spring, who have you liked the most?
I mean, I like all those guys. I'll tell you a guy that you left off there. I know you didn't do it on purpose, but Jalen Smith.
Jalen Smith.
Vol Twitter tweeted something out. I don't know if it was yesterday or maybe it was the day before. Might have been today even, but it was whenever Coach Heupel's birthday was, and they were like, "How do you say happy birthday?" And they showed Jalen Smith. He walked up to the camera, and he looks like he looks like he's like probably like 234, 233. I mean, he's in that range, and he looks solid, like cut up. I think he's a guy that's going to factor in, similar to maybe what we're kind of seeing from Khalif Keith, a guy who's looking like he's taking that second-year jump. Maybe Jalen Smith takes that second-year jump and maybe even, is really pushing Telander, Arion Carter, those guys for serious playing time next to Keenan Pili. I like that whole group, man. I think Telander's a guy. I think right now they have it set up. It's Pili. I want to say the depth chart you posted was Pili and Caleb Perry were starting, right? So Pili's your Mike, Caleb Perry's your Will. And then I think behind, I'm not sure who's the Mike behind Pili. I don't know if it's Telander right now or if Telander's the Will. So like it kind of depends on what position they have him playing.
Right.
But I think your best guys that are available right now, assuming Keenan Pili's out, your best guys, that's Telander. I would say John Smith, but it probably would be Caleb Perry right now.
No, I would. Well, I don't know because I'm not up there, but I would have to disagree with that one thoroughly. I think that Jalen Smith is going to be one of those guys. And actually, we heard from the insiders that he's been looking good all week. I mean, he's been winning in his one-on-one matchups and things like that, whether it's blocking, whether it's, just guarding running backs and things like that. But so he's been looking really good. And I would personally probably put him over Caleb Perry at this point. But I also haven't seen any of Caleb Perry this season. He just left a terrible taste in my mouth all of last season. Anytime that we're going back and watching film, oh my God, man, he's going to have to continue to improve on. It just looked like he wasn't really playing with any effort, honestly speaking. It looked like he just didn't have any confidence. He's going to have to get a whole lot better at that. Now, obviously, that D-line is loaded. Okay, we've got a whole lot of players there, and we're looking forward to a lot from them. Did you hear the coach speak on anybody from that D-line?
Nobody that I can remember. I know we heard AP and Andy Staples talking about James Pierce looking great out there. And Andy Staples talked about the D-line in general being way deeper than they've ever been at Tennessee, and potentially one of the deepest rooms probably in the whole entire country.
Now, hold on. Now, do you think that this is the deepest line that we've ever had at the university?
I mean, I don't know if I can say ever, because I don't really like when I think about those '90s rosters, late '90s.
Yeah.
I mean, just think about what about that year when we had Big Al, Big Albert Haynesworth and Big John.
Yeah.
Who else is on that? You know what I mean? Like, we have to go back and look, because I'm sure that there's been some teams that we've had like 6 or 7, first, second round type draft pick. You know what I mean? So I don't know. This is the deepest I can remember ever. That I can remember. Sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I'm sorry to cut you off. I'm going to let you finish.
No, go ahead. No, yeah. I mean, that's
okay.
Well, I was going to talk about a lot of Simmons. I think he's, every time they show him, he's, first of all, he's very articulate. You know what I mean? You can tell he's getting more and more mature. And I think he's going to emerge as our best guy on the interior of that D-line this season.
I could see that. I mean, I think that he was our best guy last year, honestly speaking. I think that it was him and it was Omar Nomalot. I think that was our best 2 players last year. Mm-hmm. And the crazy thing is Elijah Simmons more than likely won't be starting because I think he plays right behind Big O. And I think that Bryson Eason is playing behind Omar Nomalot. But to your point, P, I mean, it is a very, very deep group. But, if it was me, though, I would say, just to go back to, is this the deepest line we've ever had? I would say no, because especially back in the 90s, we had, I mean, P, just like you said, it was first rounders on every single level, like, and from first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth string, everybody, there was a first rounder in all of that, but they just didn't get the opportunity to play because football was a lot different back then. It wasn't a whole lot of this no huddle stuff where you had to rotate guys as much, even though I think that we did a good job of rotating. We probably rotated more than most teams in the country, but it still was nothing like what we're seeing today up under Coach Gardner. And I think that that's a big part of the reason that the defensive line is as good as it is now. Because, whenever you look at it, we don't really have a whole lot of those very, very high caliber players, but Coach G has done a great job of developing these players. And a big part of that is by getting them into the games early on. And I think that the rest of this team, the rest of the staff has got to try to implement that some sort of way, because even if they get out there for a snap or two, you get them out into some real live game reps and action, then you've got some players that now have confidence that, feel like, man, if my number is called, I know that I can do it because I've been out there before, even if it's just a block. It doesn't matter. Just put them out on the field in live game time situations. But yeah, I mean, I love what this defense looks like. And I know that that's been the vocal point for pretty much all of the analysts and all the talking heads and all that. But, I think that it's rightfully so. And you just can't forget about Nico, this offensive line. That running back room, like we talked about, is getting deeper. Tight ends look great. Wide receiver room. I mean, just everything, right?
Well, I thought you and I both have a tendency when we talk about that D line. We get so caught up on that interior because that's so good. But the edge guys were obviously James Pierce. Talk about Josh Josephs. Okay, talk about who's the guy behind Josh Josephs? We're gonna have Jordan Ross coming in, but you got
dude. You've got Caleb Herring. You've got Bradley.
Yeah. There's David Bradley, and then look at the strong side D end. I mean, Tyree Wesby.
Yeah.
Every time I show him in practice, I mean, you just get excited. You know what I mean? This guy's a stud. He has a chance to even steal the show. I mean, we're talking all in the hypotheticals here, but he has a chance to even be better than James Pierce. I know they're different positions, but to be more disruptive, because he's a strong side D end, he's stuffing the run, and I think can rush the passer. I mean, he gets you really excited. Dominic Bailey, Jason Jenkins, and the list goes on and on and on. So that D line across the board is going to be phenomenal.
It is. And then too, whenever you think about it, James Pierce is going to demand a double team on every single play, triple teams on a lot of plays. So yeah, I mean, that right side, they should be getting some pressure on their quarterback, and so should everyone else. So I just think that it's gearing up for a season where Tennessee could end up leading the country in sacks. I feel like we should definitely be top 5. I think we ended the season top 5 last year. We might have even been top 3. So yeah, I mean, we're just continuing to get stronger everywhere. And I think that the staff in general has done a really good job of going out and identifying talent early on. We've seen that Georgia is now at the point where they're using us pretty much to figure out who they need to offer, right? Like everyone that we go out and offer, Georgia starts to offer like almost instantly. So I think that just speaks volumes to what this staff has done, the amount of work that they've put in, and just continuing to develop talent. Now, I think that at some groups, we've got to get better at that, and we just touched on it. But, that's going to be my thing moving forward is how do these guys, like Coach Sims, Coach Inge, how are they going to do as far as rotating players? And I think that that's going to be huge. And we'll keep a close eye out on that, as we are continuing to go through all of spring and all of the off season. All right, and now on to the NCAA tournament. Okay, our Volunteers are going to be playing up against the Creighton Blue Jays coming up here Friday night. A lot of people are upset about how late this game is, and I'm definitely one of them. Okay, but we're going to have to pretty much stay up until midnight to get done watching this game. But P, I really like our chances to win this game, and I've just got the stats up for y'all here, just so y'all can take a look at, how this team performs. It's a really, really good shooting team. They've got pretty decent size, okay, from top to bottom. The guard in Baylor Shireman is 6'7", and then down to Trey Alexander, he's 6'4". Ryan Kalkbrenner, who's the center, he's 7'1", and I've actually seen him do that little turnaround Dirk shot, you know what I'm saying, kicking his foot out and stuff. So he can do that as well, but he's mostly going to be a post presence. Stephen Ashworth is 6'1", and he's probably shorter than that. And then we've got Mason Miller, who's 6'9". Francisco Farabello is 6'3", and then Isaac Trout is 6'10". All right, so you could tell they've got a pretty decently sized team. They've got some tall guys, but again, they can all shoot, and they could pose some problems for us. But P, how do you feel about this game coming up on Friday, man?
Man, this is an interesting matchup, probably the most interesting matchup of the entire thing. I think if we get past this game, I like our odds the rest of the way. But this is a team, man, you look at, they have a lot of length. Okay, so you see 6'7", 6'9", 6'10", 7'1". There's a lot of length on that roster. And so, how do we match up offensively against those guys? Can those guys really play defense against our guys? Can we get to the basket? Can we create our own shot? I think will be a big part of it. But I think it's going to ultimately come down to our defense. Can we play Rick Barnes brand defense and smother these guys, contest the ball, contest the shot, and make them have to earn everything. Okay, make them earn everything and try to win on the boards. I know they're a long rangey team. Can we win on the boards? Steal some possessions that way. Take some possessions from those guys and get some extras for ourselves and do all that. And I think DK has to show up this week. He didn't really show up last game, but he had like 15 points, whatever it was. I think he needs to get up to
18 or
18. It was something like that.
Yeah, it was 18. It might have been 23, but yeah. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, it was something. It was low, but I think he made some free throws late and kind of boosted up. But he needs to get up to that kind of that 30 range and really kind of be that guy that we can just turn to and get some consistent baskets from. I think for us to be successful this week.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, obviously DK is going to have to show up, but I think that, and now they're interviewing Hendon Hooker, but I think that a lot of it is going to be predicated off of who else can show up, right? Like we talk a whole lot about Santi, and he does need to kind of do a better job shooting and actually hitting his shots. I like what Triple J's been doing though, because he may not necessarily be scoring a whole bunch of points, but as far as getting rebounds and just his presence, period, has been really strong for us. And that's going to be necessary in this game because Creighton's going to do a whole lot of, moving around. Okay. It's a whole lot of motion in their offense. And as soon as they get open, if they have any space, they can shoot. And what I'm looking for early on is Tennessee needs to get out to an early start. Like we need to get up early on Creighton because it can turn into like an avalanche situation where once they start to hit shots, it seems like everybody gets hot. So, I think the Triple J just needs to continue to do what he's been doing. Definitely want to see ZZ put in some work, get some points. Jonas Adu needs to step up for sure, big time down in the paint on offense and defense. Really everybody, P, to your point, defense is going to be critical, but we've got to be able to hit shots because this team can score in bunches quick. I don't know if any of y'all have seen this, but go and look at those highlights of them versus UConn when they beat them by like 20 points or something. I mean, they were shooting the lights out. Everybody on that team can shoot in a whole lot of different areas. Not a whole lot of people that you would expect to create their own shots. I think outside of maybe like Trey Alexander and, maybe the big man, okay, maybe he can kind of create in some sort of a way as far as just being a post presence. But outside of that, it's catch and shoot, and they're going to put us to work. So this is a game that I also feel like Tennessee needs to utilize their bench because players will be getting tired. So we need for our bench guys to step up. Meshack, we need him on, defense and on offense in a very major way. Gainey, same thing. No stupid turnovers. And then, hey, I don't know if we can get any of the other, younger guys onto the court. Obviously, Tobe has played well, but what about some of those other post-presence guys? Can they get into the game? Can they help us out? Because, hey, we may end up getting in foul trouble early on just trying to play good defense. It all depends on how the game is called. But, yeah, I like this matchup in favor of our Volunteers. It's a tough one, but they're all going to be tough. All right, this is Sweet 16. I think that we will advance on to the Elite 8. All right, and now on to the last segment of the day. We got to talk about these rule changes. Now, they are implemented in the NFL, but it's probably going to be coming to college as well. We've seen that, and we already know that, especially with the Big Two, everything is moving towards an NFL model. So I'm going to pull up this screen for y'all, and we are going to read off what the new hip drop tackling rule is. And P, I'm going to get your thoughts on it too. All right, so it reads, it is a foul if the player uses the following technique to bring a runner to the ground. A, grabs the runner with both hands or wraps the runner with both arms. And B, unweights himself by swiveling and dropping his hips and or lower body, landing on and trapping the runner's legs and or below the knee. All right, so P, you just read it. I'm sure that you've already heard about it, but what do you think about this rule? Do you like it? Do you hate it? I know that there's a lot of people out there that have been very vocal about it. Some people love it. Some people hate it. But what are your thoughts on it?
Man, I think I'm in the minority. A lot of people hate it, but I freaking love it. I freaking love it. I mean, I think you and I watch the game the same way. Anytime we see a guy get tackled like this, we're like, ooh, you know what I mean? Like we hate to see that. And I'm pretty sure this is how Brew McCoy got hurt. The same type of tackle. Like, in my opinion, it's a cowardly way to tackle.
Yep.
Like, why are you dropping your weight on my legs, dude? Like, if you're going to tackle me, then just, like, wrap me up and drive through my body. Don't freaking just plop your body down because all it's going to do is lead to injuries. And so I'm all for it. I know people don't like it, but, I think we get through, like, a year or two of doing it, maybe 2-3 years. Players will kind of get acclimated to it, and they'll take that type of tackling out of their tool bag, and they'll start tackling the right way. But I'm all for it, and I'm glad they made this change.
Listen, P, this is the craziest thing because I was kind of hoping that you would say the exact opposite. We didn't even talk about this leading up to the show, but we are on the exact same page. I think anyone and you know what, actually it's crazy because it's not anyone who's played football. There's a lot of people who are complaining about this, and it's mostly coming from offensive players. It's coming from quarterbacks, wide receivers, and all of that.
Wow.
dude, there is absolutely no reason to tackle this way. Now, I've seen some clips, and what I think it was Baltimore versus somebody where that clip, somebody ended up getting hurt in that one. But in that, if that's one of the instances, that one wasn't necessarily what I'm talking about. We're talking about whenever a player, is kind of getting dragged or something, or they come up, like from the backside of somebody, and they literally like come up and just boom, just drop your weight. That is going to hurt someone. Okay. And
Yep.
I've seen the worst injury that I've ever seen. That's exactly what happened. And it was in practice. Someone tried to do that and somebody dislocated their hip and it
Mm.
was hideous. So, yes, I mean, that this rule is absolutely necessary. There's no reason for anyone to ever tackle like this unless you are intentionally trying to tackle someone or unless you're just not a very good football player, right? Like,
Yeah.
I don't understand how or why you would ever do that. It's a very careless way to try to bring someone down. So I'm
Mm.
super excited that they took that out of the game in the NFL. And P, like you said, I think that was how Brew ended up getting injured. They need to take it out of college too, and
Mm.
hopefully that will come. Yeah, I would say probably before the season starts. That's usually how it happens. The NFL will implement something kind of
Mhm.
in the springtime or early on in the summer, and then college follows suit shortly after, leading into that upcoming season. We saw the same thing with Harding and all that good stuff. So
Mhm.
I think that's a really big deal. Now let's get on to the new kickoff rules. All right, so the key changes to NFL kickoffs: the kicking team will still kick from the 35-yard line, but players on the kicking team will line up at the opponent 40. Those players cannot move, and the kicker himself cannot cross the 50-yard line until the ball hits the ground, or a receiving player in the landing zone, which is essentially the red zone, inside of the 20-yard line or inside of the end zone. And it goes on to say that the receiving team must have a minimum of 9 players lined up in the setup zone, which it says is between the 30 and 35-yard lines, with a maximum of 2 returners lined up in the landing zone. Any kick that hits the landing zone must be returned, while any kick that bounces into the end zone from the landing zone must either be returned or down by the receiving team for a touchback to the 20-yard line. All right. And now it goes on to say that any kick short of the landing zone gives possession to the receiving team at its own 40. Any kick that hits the end zone and is down is a touchback to the 30. And any kick that goes out of the back of the end zone is also a touchback to the 30. There are no more fair catches. There are no onside kicks until the fourth quarter begins. Kickoffs after safeties will be from the 20, and the kicker will have the option to use a tee. Setup and landing zones will not change. Penalties that carry over to kickoffs would only impact the spot of the kick, not the setup or landing zones, and not where players line up. All right, so P, obviously there's a whole lot to unpack right there, but we've actually seen it done on Twitter and stuff with some different leagues. But what do you think about this new rule change to the kickoffs?
Well, I mean, it's definitely different. It takes some getting used to. It's obviously a safer way to play. Now, I guess a big question for me is because I'm used to kind of having some lead blockers for the return guy. It seems like if 9 guys are all up there kind of on that front line, it seems like for the defense, like or the kickoff team, if they get past that front line, they have a free go pretty much to go get the return guy. So we'll kind of see how that plays out. But it makes an interesting rule. I'd say probably my least favorite thing about it is no onside kicks until the fourth quarter, and you got to be losing. So there's no surprise on sides. There's no. Well, I guess you can still kind of pooch it if you can get to land inside the 20. You can still kind of get a little pooch onside type of deal, I guess.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It was technically used to for sure. How you feel about it?
Yeah, so I actually like it, right? Because what it does is it takes a very dangerous part of this game out, and it still allows us the opportunity to get some sort of excitement. Now, I don't like the fact that we can't do onside kicks, really. I mean, because an onside kick is probably never going to work whenever everyone knows that it's coming, right? Like usually you have to try to sneak and do it some sort of a way for it to actually work. And so I don't like that part of the game, and I wish there was a way for them to figure out how to do it without taken away from the onside kick, because that's such a special part of the game. I wish that they would have implemented this rule back when Peyton was playing up against the Saints in the Super Bowl, because they would have won that game, right? So, but it is. I think that would be the worst part. They need to try to figure that out. But all in all, I think that it's a really big deal, and it's something that's going to kind of help increase the longevity of the players moving forward, which to me is what it's all about. There needs to be a much better quality of life for all of these NFL players and really all football players in general. Like, we know all too well, it's a very, very tough game. And I know that people enjoy seeing the big hits and all that stuff, but you got to think about the player safety. And, some of it kind of is flag football esque, but, it's also kind of necessary. Like some of the stuff is over the top, but, I think that these two rules are very much necessary, which actually kind of leads me into my next topic. And final topic, which is going to be how football is changing from the perspective of what we heard Coach Prime saying, with his son and with Travis Hunter potentially pulling in Eli Manning. We also heard Caleb Williams come out and say, hey, I might not be going to the Bears. I might just, sit out or something like that. So what do you think about how the game is changing? Because a lot of players are participating in these pro days like I'm watching right now, and Brew McCoy is getting interviewed. Also, really quickly, if y'all did not see the Juice last night, make sure that you tune into that. It's only about 10 minutes, but it's most definitely worth it. So, there's several players that are opting out of pro days, opting out of combines. They're not throwing, they're not doing anything. Like we could talk about a guy like Brock Bowers, who everyone says, oh, he's 6'3", he's 6'4", he's 240. I think he's about 6'2 and a half, 220-ish pounds, maybe somewhere around 230. And he hasn't measured in anywhere. He won't run anything. People saying, oh, he runs like a 4'3", 4'4". He's a 4'6'5". I'll give him at absolute and total best. So what he actually is a bigger, slower wide receiver that cannot block and cannot really do much of anything with the ball in his hands without a whole lot of blocking in front of him and help from his teammates. But, so guys like that can hide. And, I think that first rounders will probably just say, hey, we're not going to do anything. But what do you think about what's going on with how football is changing from this perspective?
Yeah, I mean, well, I think first of all, you look at, these guys opting out or, these guys, not basically saying that they're not going to go to a certain team. Like we're kind of that age now where people are really just kind of making their own decisions. Like they're not really worried about peer pressure, not really worried about, what everybody's going to think. It's complete autonomy these days. Like, I don't know if it's social media or whatever it is, but like these guys they're just kind of doing whatever they want now. And they're basically making like the organizations or the leagues kind of bend the knee to them. Like, heck, I know I'm a good player, especially Caleb Williams. Hey, I'm that guy. If I want to go play for the Bears, I'm not going to show up. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to play, and whatever's going to happen is going to happen. But I'm eventually going to get out of this contract, and so I get picked up by somebody else. Like,
right.
These guys are just kind of doing their own thing, and I mean, heck, I get it. It's a lot of money on the table, a lot of money at stake here. Especially you talk about a game like football where you're putting your health at risk constantly.
Life at risk.
Yeah, seriously, you're putting your life at risk. Like you deserve to be able to make those type of decisions. If you don't feel safe, going to a certain organization, I mean, maybe you shouldn't be forced to do it. Like, I mean, heck, I know they're paying a lot of money, but you should be able to put yourself in a situation you feel like is best for you. And that's kind of the era we're in these days, I think.
Yeah, that's the other thing that's very interesting is that it's one of the only jobs where you don't get to decide on if you're going to accept the job offer or not necessarily. I mean, I guess you can, but there's no real competition, right? Like you can't go and say, oh, well, I don't really like this organization, so I would rather interview with this organization and see, if maybe we are a better fit. It could end up going that way. And I think that, honestly speaking, that's overdue for the NFL. And it's so funny because whenever you listen to these analysts on ESPN and stuff, they're like, oh, nobody's bigger than the NFL and they're going to find somebody else. But guess what? That happened with y'all's generation because that's how y'all thought. Like they brainwashed y'all into feeling like they really have all the power. But the players are the ones with the real power. And if they all band together, which I feel like in this generation, we'll see a whole lot more of that, then at some point, the people who want to put out a good product are going to break. I can promise you that because they're going to get tired of going out and picking up scrubs, and fans are like, oh man, like football sucks now because there's no more good players. It's not fun to watch. It's boring. I'm telling you. So that's kind of where I think it's going to end up heading at. But, at some point, man, everything is going to end up trickling down, I think, to college. And in this situation, it just kind of seems like it went the opposite way. It seems like it started off in college and now it's moving on up to the NFL. So a lot of interesting stuff right there, but that's going to be it for this video. And thank y'all for sticking all the way to the end. Please make sure to leave your thoughts down in the comments section, and also make sure to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, share with your friends, family, and other volunteer fans. And we'll see y'all on the next one. Thanks. Peace.